Welcome to Jamaica's history, where the hidden past, the turbulent present, and the mystical future of our island come to life. Before Bob Marley sang of redemption, before Usain Bolt dashed into history, there was one man who set the global black movement ablaze, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But did you know he was once shot multiple times in cold blood, yet still rose the very next day, bandaged and bleeding, to deliver a speech that shook Philadelphia? This is his story, not the one they taught in school, the one they don't want you to know. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. was born on August 17, 1887, in the quiet coastal town of St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica, to Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr., a stonemason, and Sarah Jane Richards, a domestic worker and farmer. At the dawn of the 20th century, around 1900, the young Garvey began working as a printer's apprentice at his godfather's shop in St. Anne's Bay. His formal education ended after completing the 6th standard, sometime around 1903. Around 1906, Garvey and his mother moved to Kingston, where he began working at the P.A. Benjamin Manufacturing Company as a printer. On March 18, 1908, his mother passed away in Kingston at the age of 56. In 1909, Garvey launched his first publication, Garvey's Watchman, which folded after just 3 issues. But the seed of journalism had been planted. Between 1910 and 1912, Garvey traveled extensively across Central America. He lived in Port Limon, Costa Rica, edited La Nación in 1911, and then moved to Colón, Panama, where he edited a tri-weekly paper before returning to Jamaica in 1912. In April 1912, he relocated to London and attended Birkbeck College. His powerful article, British West Indies in the Mirror of Civilization, was published in the African Times and Orient Review on October 13, 1913. Between December 10, 1913, and January 14, 1914, he traveled to several European cities including Paris, Madrid, Boulogne, and Monte Carlo. In mid-January 1914, he returned to London from Scotland and resumed classes at Birkbeck. Garvey left England on June 17, 1914, aboard the SS Trent. By July 8, 1914, he was back in Jamaica, and just 12 days later, on July 20th, he met Amy Ashwood, and together they co-founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Shortly afterward, in July or August of 1914, he published a pamphlet titled A Talk with Afro-West Indians, The Negro Race and Its Problems. When World War I erupted on August 4, 1914, Garvey's mission intensified. On September 8, 1914, he wrote to Booker T. Washington asking for his support. Washington replied with an invitation to Tuskegee on October 3, 1914. In June 1915, Garvey's father was admitted to the Sion, Anne's poorhouse. Booker T. Washington died on November 14, 1915, ending hopes for a personal meeting. On March 6, 1916, Garvey boarded the SS Talek for America. He arrived penniless in New York City on March 24, 1916, moving in with a Jamaican family and finding work as a printer. He began nightly street corner speeches in Harlem. Garvey visited W.E.B. Du Bois on April 25, 1916. His first public U.S. lecture was on May 9, 1916, at St. Mark's Church Hall, where he famously fell off the stage. Between May and June of 1916, Garvey toured 38 U.S. states in a year-long speaking campaign. As America entered World War I on April 6, 1917, Garvey returned to New York in May and formed the first UNIA chapter with 13 members. On July 2, 1917, race riots erupted in East St. Louis. Just 6 days later, on July 8th, Garvey condemned the massacre in a Harlem speech titled The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riots. The Russian Revolution began on November 7, 1917. In 1918, Amy Ashwood joined him in New York. By June 3rd, the FBI had begun tracking his outdoor speeches. On August 17, 1918, Garvey launched the Negro World newspaper. By November 8, 1918, World War I had ended, but Garvey's war was just beginning. In early 1919, Garvey's publications were banned in Belize, Trinidad, Jamaica, and British Guiana. On April 27, 1919, Garvey announced plans for a black shipping company, the Black Star Line. By July 12th, the Bureau of Investigation requested detailed files on him. A mass meeting at Carnegie Hall on August 25, 1919, aimed to sell Black Star Line stock. Garvey was briefly jailed on August 29th, released on $3,000 bail. By September 15th, the FBI had begun seeking evidence for his deportation. On September 17, 1919, the Black Star Line acquired its first ship, the SS Yarmouth, later renamed Frederick Douglass. Tragically, on October 14, 1919, Garvey was shot in an assassination attempt by George Tyler. Amazingly, Garvey survived, and the very next day, on October 15th, Tyler committed suicide in jail. Despite his injuries, Garvey gave a public address in Philadelphia just hours later. By early 1920, his movement was under siege. The Negro Factories Corporation was incorporated on January 23, 1920. Garvey separated from Amy Ashwood on March 6, 1920, and later married Amy Jacques. On April 9, 1920, his father died. From August 1st to 31st, 1920, the UNIA hosted its first international convention at Madison Square Garden. There, Garvey was declared Provisional President of Africa, and the red, black, and green flag was born. But infighting and criminal accusations grew. In late 1920, Garvey proposed a $2 million construction loan for Liberia. A second UNIA convention began on August 1, 1921, but internal corruption sparked new scandals by August 25th. Garvey was arrested for mail fraud on January 12, 1922. The Black Star Line was dissolved by April of that year. He married Amy Jacques on July 27, 1922. On May 18, 1923, Garvey's mail fraud trial began. He was sentenced to 5 years on June 21, 1923, and after September 10th, deportation preparations began. On February 8, 1925, he was sent to Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. President Calvin Coolidge commuted his sentence on November 18, 1927. Garvey was deported on December 2, 1927, after a final speech from the deck of the SS Saramaka. In April 1929, Garvey launched the Black Man newspaper in Jamaica. His son Marcus Jr. was born on September 17, 1930. Julius Winston followed on August 16, 1933. On October 17, 1933, the Negro World ceased publication. In March 1935, Garvey returned to London alone. He suffered a stroke in January 1940, and on June 10th, after reading a false obituary about himself, he died of a second hemorrhage. They mocked him, shot him, imprisoned him, and deported him. But Marcus Garvey's message lives on. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. On November 10th, 1964, his body was returned to Jamaica, and the next day, he was declared the country's first national hero. They tried to bury him, but they didn't know. Marcus Garvey was a seed. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, comment below. Should Garvey be on the Jamaican dollar? Thanks for watching Jamaica's History. Until next time, walk good.